Yeah, I mean, a self-made young woman, she started at a very young age, had a lot of discipline, and honestly, she's a poet.
When Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce lit up the internet with an engagement sparkle big enough to outshine a halftime show, Hollywood did what it always does: confetti captions, champagne reels, breathless inside the guest list chatter. But if the whispers are right, one person wasn't raising a glass. Behind a closed door across town, Meghan Markle paced, frustrated, anxious, and, as some insiders claim, spiraling. Not over their romance, but over a plan she thought would finally put her back in control of the story. For months, Meghan had been in recovery mode. Season 2 of her Netflix docu-series, With Love, Meghan, didn't travel the distance. Even sympathetic critics, those who once praised the Polish, called it thin, a little too choreographed, light on substance. The numbers faded. The buzz drained away. And somewhere between the algorithms and the headlines, Meghan started searching for the next on-ramp to relevance. Swift Kelce looked like a golden lane. Pop culture royalty plus an NFL. Superstar equals attention on autopilot. Meghan, sources say, didn't see tabloids. She saw a strategic pivot. If she could welcome the newly engaged couple onto her upcoming podcast, the launch wouldn't just land, it would detonate. Picture it: an exclusive love story sit-down, a gentle talk about fame, grounding, and choosing each other in public. A-list heat, instantly bankable, sponsors lining up, a reset delivered in soft lighting and perfect audio. Step 1 was charm, a personal video message, warm and congratulatory, sent to Taylor's team. Flattery first, business second. It went unanswered. Not even a polite "thank you." Silence can be louder than a no. And this one rang. Undeterred, her team followed with the formal pitch. A relaxed conversation on love and staying steady in the spotlight. An open-hearted episode to bless the feed and reset the narrative. But if the industry chatter is accurate, Swift's and Kelce's camps read the subtext. They reportedly saw an attach, not an exchange, an attempt to surf their wave rather than tell their story. One rep, according to those close to the talks, used a word that stings in this town: self-serving. Another allegedly framed it as piggybacking. The response, when it finally arrived, was blunt. They weren't interested, and they didn't want further contact. The no didn't land as a closed door. It landed like a trapdoor. Meghan, blindsided, turned inward and then outward, questioning the approach, the finesse, the sequencing. Was it the manager, the agent, the streamer, liaison? To her, the idea was sound. The execution, she argued, had failed. But the harder truth, the one that flattens a room, was simpler. Taylor and Travis didn't want to align, at least not now. A smaller idea, brief cameos in a cozy holiday special, was floated next. That, too, was declined. And for Meghan, the symbolism stung more than the loss itself. If two of the most brand-protective teams in the business were this definitive, what message did that send to everyone else? Inside Meghan's operation, the temperature changed. Meetings tightened. Calls shortened. The lacquered confidence gave way to clipped sentences and long, cooling silences. Staff described the mood as walking on eggshells. The problem wasn't only a missed booking, it was what gatekeepers were saying off the record, that the numbers weren't following the name anymore. With Love, Meghan Season 2 underperforming, and headlines tiring of soft focus features, some teams saw little upside in lending their shine to someone fighting gravity. Meghan tried to brute force momentum, privately bankrolling the podcast, blocking studios, lining up editors, commissioning pitch decks. But the hidden costs add up fast. Rentals, post, marketing, guest wrangling, release calendars. Every yes felt less like a relationship and more like a negotiation. And even the best deck can't sell what a wary market won't buy. Word spread that Meghan's camp kept circling back after declines. Assistants warned clients to expect an invitation and to steer clear. Boundaries hardened. Some insiders even whisper a legal note was discussed to formalize the no further contact line. In an ecosystem built on back channels and soft power, that kind of posture reads not just firm, but final. Meghan, who has historically played a long game, stacking small wins into a larger arc, faced an uncooperative board. She questioned everything: the streamer deals, the brand alignments, the podcast itself. If guests were a wall, what if she removed the wall? A solo empire. Her voice, her lens, her message. No more waiting for someone else's schedule or approval. The studio was dressed, soundproofing perfect, flowers flown in from Malibu, lights dialed to glow. She took the chair opposite an empty one and rehearsed lines as if a headliner might still walk in. None did, so she recorded anyway. A reflective monologue on worth, resilience, and rewriting your story when the room won't listen. It was sincere. It just wasn't the reset she'd imagined. The episode landed with modest ripples. Loyal fans shared. A few blogs smirked. No trend lines bent. And outside her window, Swift Kelce kept humming. Paparazzi frames, venue speculation, Etsy merch, the internet's endless appetite for fairy dust. Meghan watched, scrolling, not jealous of their romance, but haunted by what it represented. Once, she was the headline, the hum, the center of the frame. Now she couldn't get a PR intern to return a call. The team thinned quietly at first. One producer asking for time to reset, a publicist who stopped replying to weekend emails, a trusted fixer who used to make impossible bookings happen and now couldn't seem to return a call. Budgets tightened. Contracts that once rolled over by default suddenly needed fresh justification. In hallways that used to buzz, the sound now was the click of a door closing softly behind someone carrying a box of desk plants. Those who remained learned to read the weather in Meghan's eyes before a meeting started. Some days were bright. New angles, new optimism. Other days, every suggestion sounded like an accusation. Why didn't this work? Why didn't they answer? What are we missing that everyone else can see? The holiday special was supposed to be the gentlest win of all. A fireplace, soft strings, a montage of kindnesses, and a few familiar faces to sprinkle the stardust. The Darcy outline looked lovely on paper. One evening of warmth to remind the audience that tenderness still sells. But without the cameos, it became a beautiful room with no guests. When the pass came back from the streamer, it was phrased in careful language, not aligned with current slate. Insufficient breadth of appeal, the sort of phrases that pretend to be neutral and land like a verdict. Someone suggested, re-editing for Instagram, slicing the hour into polite sips. Meghan shook her head. To her, that felt like setting fine china out on a park bench. She'd rather box it than cheapen it. In the weeks that followed, the phones rang less, but the noise in her mind grew louder. She thought about how this business courts a person loudly, and then forgets them at a whisper. She thought about all the "we should do something together" secrets that had evaporated the second a quarter turned or a headline shifted. She thought about the years when the world treated her like a mirror, obsessed not with her, but with their reflection in her story. Now the mirror faced a blank wall. That's when the short-form idea arrived like a lifeline. A series of crisp, elegant micro-documentaries about women who move the world quietly. Doctors in understaffed wards, archivists saving history from mildew, coaches who change a kid's life for the price of a bus fare. The concept had integrity. It also had invoices, access clearances, travel, licenses, editors who know how to make 10 minutes feel like a complete life. She pitched it anyway. The replies were kind enough to hurt. "We love this, but not now. We're fully committed this quarter. Circle back when you've secured X talent." Talent? For stories built on people who don't own a red carpet? Her publicist floated a sabbatical. Disappear for a year. Sharpen. Return with a clean angle. To strategists, absence can be an asset. To Meghan, absence felt like erasure. She feared that the longer she stayed off stage, the more the narrative would calcify without her. There's a difference between leaving the room and being locked out of it. She could live with the first. The second played in her head like a door slamming on loop. So she kept moving. Some days that meant work that no one saw. Rewriting an intro until it sounded like breath rather than copy. Rehearsing an opening so it rose from the chest instead of the throat. Calling a small-town librarian to request a photo from an attic box. Other days, it meant watching momentum happen to other people. Every swift Kelce detail seemed to hatch two more: guest lists, venues, dress codes, and for the first time in a long time, she understood how a person can be surrounded by noise and feel wrapped in quiet. When the first solo episode went live, she didn't refresh the analytics like she once did. She made tea, sat in the doorway where the light falls warm in the late afternoon, and let the silence do what it does. Tell the truth. The truth was not flattering, and it was not fatal. The truth was that attention had walked out, but audience, real audience, could still be invited back in. The difference is that attention arrives with flowers and a camera crew. Audience knocks gently and asks if it can stay. The next morning, a message came from someone whose name would never trend. A teacher in a wind-battered district, thanking her for a sentence about showing up when no one claps. Another from a midwife, who listened to the episode on a break between births. Then, a tiny arts nonprofit wrote to say they'd shared a clip in their newsletter. None of these were the splash she had wanted. All of them, together, felt like water. It wasn't a pivot as much as a subtraction. She stopped trying to borrow other people's heat and started learning how to build warmth. No promises about guests to be announced. No orchestration meant to look like spontaneity. Just the cadence of one voice telling the truth as far as she could see it, and then stopping where the light gave out. She returned to the short-form concept, but she made it smaller and closer. An episode filmed in a community clinic 5 miles from her front door. Another at a weekend kitchen where a retired chef teaches knife skills alongside a lesson in dignity. No jet fuel, no licensed soundtrack, just the consonants of a room, footsteps, ladles, pages turning, and the hum of people who haven't waited to be noticed to do the work. The edits were clean. The colors were gentle. The titles were honest. When she posted the first one, the comment count was not impressive. The completion rate was. There were still rejections. There always would be. There were still meetings that died at "let's circle back." But a curious thing happens when a person quits chasing proofs of importance and starts keeping promises. Instead, the work thickens, the voice lowers. The story stops asking, "Do you see me?" and starts asking, "Are you served?" That is not a headline anyone prints. It is the kind of headline a life can keep. She will still be tempted by the megaphone, by the shortcut that looks like a collaboration and is really a ladder. When the Swift Kelce wedding finally arrives, the photos will be everywhere. The commentary breathless, the think pieces conflicted and late. A younger version of her would have tried to stitch herself to that moment, to ride its thermals. The woman who sits now in a smaller studio with a steadier breath will do something. Else, she will let the spectacle pass. She will keep her appointments with the clinic, the kitchen, the librarian, the teacher who wrote from a place the internet forgets exists. That won't turn algorithms into allies overnight. It might never turn them at all. But there is a kind of relevance that doesn't need rescuing because it isn't built on rescue. It's built on practice. If she protects that, if she chooses craft over clout in the unglamorous hours when no one is asking for a quote, The arc can bend. Slowly, stubbornly, the way a vine finds light through a fence. And if the calls from certain rooms never come back, then the rooms will be smaller and kinder, and the doors will stay open. The camera will roll, not for a headliner, but for a story that breathes. The credits will be short. The applause will be quiet. And for the first time in a long time, the quiet will feel like proof